Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Echoes of Forgotten Lives. It means a lot to have you here with me again today. Take a slow breath in, let your shoulders soften, and let this story gently carry you back through time. Now, imagine you are standing beside a towering wooden structure, rising high above a quiet stretch of countryside, its distinctive metal dome glinting faintly in the afternoon light. You built this tower with a single, extraordinary dream in mind, not simply to send messages through the air, but to send electricity itself, wirelessly, freely, to every corner of the entire world, lighting homes that had never once seen electric light before. Your funding has just been cut off, without warning. Your dream stands unfinished and slowly rusting in the open air, construction crews long since sent home. Most people, facing such a crushing disappointment, would have quietly given up their grandest ambitions entirely. This is the story of Nikola Tesla, the forgotten genius who dreamed of free power for the world. Stay with me, my friends, because his remarkable, complicated legacy remains genuinely difficult to fully untangle, even today. Our story begins in a small village called Smiljan in the Austrian Empire, in a region now part of the country of Croatia, in the year 1856. Tesla's father served as an Orthodox priest, hoping his own son might eventually follow him into the priesthood as well, while his mother, despite having little formal education herself, possessed a genuinely remarkable, inventive mind, often creating clever mechanical devices to help with everyday household tasks, weaving intricate patterns, and repairing tools with her own careful hands. Tesla himself later credited her, quite directly, with shaping his own natural inventive instincts, describing her as the true source of his own creative gift. As a young man, Tesla studied engineering, first in Austria and later in Prague, though he never actually completed a formal degree at either institution. He eventually moved to Paris, working for a company connected to the famous American inventor, Thomas Edison. In the year 1884, Tesla made the significant decision to immigrate to the United States, hoping to work directly alongside Edison himself in his own bustling New York laboratory. Can you imagine that, my friends? A young immigrant, arriving in an entirely new country, carrying little more than a letter of introduction, and an extraordinary, restless mind, full of untested ideas. Tesla and Edison, however, soon developed a genuinely significant professional disagreement. Edison firmly championed direct current electricity, an established system he had already invested enormous personal resources into developing, while Tesla increasingly believed alternating current offered far superior advantages, particularly for transmitting electrical power across much longer distances, without the significant energy losses direct current suffered along the way. According to Tesla's own later recollections, he had once been promised a substantial financial reward for successfully redesigning several of Edison's own generators, only to be told, once the difficult work was finally completed, that the earlier promise had merely been a light-hearted joke. Whether this particular exchange occurred exactly as Tesla later described it remains genuinely debated among careful historians today, but the fundamental disagreement between the two men over which electrical system truly represented the future was entirely real. This fundamental disagreement eventually led Tesla to leave Edison's own company entirely and begin developing his own independent, competing systems. Tesla eventually partnered with a businessman named George Westinghouse, and together they worked to promote alternating current as a genuinely superior alternative to Edison's preferred direct current system. This period became known, quite dramatically, as the War of the Currents, a fierce, competitive struggle to determine which electrical system would ultimately power the modern world. Does that surprise you, my friends? Two competing visions for something we now consider so completely ordinary. Electricity itself, once locked in a genuinely fierce, high-stakes public competition for the future of an entire industry. Tesla's alternating current system achieved several genuinely significant early triumphs. In the year 1893, it successfully powered the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, an enormous public fair, demonstrating clearly to countless amazed visitors that alternating current could be both safe and remarkably practical for everyday use. Just 2 years later, his system helped power a groundbreaking hydroelectric station at Niagara Falls, cementing alternating current's eventual, lasting triumph over Edison's competing direct current system. Can you picture that scene, my friends? Thousands of ordinary visitors walking through a brilliantly illuminated fairground, powered entirely by a system many experts had confidently declared too dangerous or too impractical to ever genuinely succeed. With these considerable early successes behind him, Tesla grew increasingly ambitious in his own future plans. He began developing what would become his single most audacious project yet, a towering structure built on Long Island, in New York, which he called Wardenclyffe, rising nearly 200 feet above the surrounding countryside, its distinctive dome-shaped crown visible for miles around. His genuine, deeply held vision extended far beyond simple wireless communication alone. Tesla dreamed of transmitting electrical power itself, wirelessly, freely, across enormous distances, potentially delivering genuinely free, universally accessible electricity to people scattered across the entire globe, regardless of how remote or how far removed from existing power lines they happen to live. There is something you may have heard about this particular chapter of Tesla's story, my friends. Many popular modern accounts, especially widely shared online, suggest that Tesla had actually achieved working, wireless power transmission, and that his revolutionary technology was then deliberately suppressed by powerful, threatened financial interests, eager to protect their own existing profits from cheap or freely available electricity. It is a genuinely compelling, dramatic narrative, and one that continues to circulate widely, decades after his own death. But here is the more complete, historical truth. Wardenclyffe's ultimate failure resulted primarily from conventional, straightforward financial difficulties, rather than any deliberate, coordinated conspiracy. His primary financial backer, the wealthy banker J.P. Morgan, withdrew crucial funding, largely because the ambitious project had grown wildly over budget, and its long-term commercial value remained genuinely uncertain and difficult to properly demonstrate to a practical, profit-minded investor. There is also little solid historical evidence that Tesla had actually solved the extraordinarily difficult technical challenges involved in transmitting genuinely useful amounts of electrical power safely and efficiently across such enormous distances. His vision remained remarkable and genuinely ahead of his own time, but it was never actually fully achieved or successfully demonstrated in any complete, practical form, however inspiring the underlying idea itself genuinely was. Without adequate funding to continue, construction on Wardenclyffe eventually stopped entirely. The unfinished tower stood abandoned for several more years, its metal fittings slowly rusting in the salt air, before finally being demolished and sold for scrap metal during the difficult economic pressures of the First World War, the site itself eventually falling into quiet, overgrown neglect. Does that feel strange to you, my friends? A structure built to represent one of history's most genuinely ambitious dreams, eventually torn down and sold simply for its raw, practical scrap value. Tesla's later years grew increasingly difficult and genuinely isolated. He continued developing new ideas and new patents, but struggled increasingly with securing adequate ongoing financial support for his continually expanding ambitious visions, moving frequently between hotel rooms as unpaid bills gradually accumulated behind him. He eventually settled into a quiet, modest life inside a New York hotel room, developing certain unusual, well-documented personal habits, including a particularly deep, genuine attachment to feeding pigeons in a nearby city park, describing his bond with one particular white pigeon in his own later interviews, with a tenderness he rarely expressed toward other people in his own life. And here is what stays with me most, my friends. Thinking about his remarkable, complicated story today. Tesla died in the year 1943, largely alone and relatively impoverished, inside that same modest hotel room, despite having personally developed technology that now powers much of our entire modern world. His name faded, for many years afterward, from widespread, immediate public recognition, even as his own foundational inventions quietly continued powering homes and cities across the entire globe. Does that feel familiar to you in any way, my friends? Perhaps you have poured genuine effort into something meaningful without immediately receiving the recognition or the reward that effort might have genuinely deserved, wondering quietly whether anyone else truly noticed the work you put in. I want you to remember something important that Tesla's remarkable life quietly proves. Genuine, lasting impact does not always arrive alongside immediate recognition or immediate reward. Sometimes, the true value of your own careful, patient work only becomes fully, genuinely visible much later, long after you yourself might have expected it, quietly powering something far larger than you could have imagined at the time. So keep going, my friends. Keep listening. Keep learning. One patient, determined step at a time. The quiet, unglamorous work you do today may one day become the invisible foundation that an entire future world eventually comes to depend upon. If Tesla's story stayed with you today, you are certainly not alone. His remarkable, complicated legacy remains one of the most genuinely fascinating stories in the entire history of modern invention. There are so many more forgotten lives out there, waiting patiently for us to uncover them together, one at a time. Each one carries a quiet lesson, wrapped gently inside an unforgettable moment. I would truly love for you to be here when we open the next one together. Subscribing costs you nothing at all, but it means we get to keep exploring these lost corners of history, side by side, story after story. Somewhere out there, right now, is another name history has almost completely forgotten. And soon, my friends, we will bring it gently back into the light, together. Tell me, my friends, in the comments below, do you think Tesla's most ambitious, unfinished dreams deserve more genuine credit, or should we mainly remember him for what he actually, successfully completed? Until next time, take care of yourselves, and never stop learning.